a long time after Aslan had made Narnia from nothing, and when Diggory had grown up. 4 children were staying in a big house in the country. When they first found this wardrobe in a spare room, they didn't realise how special it was. It all started with Lucy. She went into the wardrobe and found herself in Narnia. But the others didn't believe her. Then she went into Narnia a second time, and Edmund followed her. But he lied about it. And so Peter and Susan still didn't believe her. But then all 4 children got into Narnia. And that's when their adventures really began. Let's find out what happened. Peter, Susan, Edmund and Lucy shivered as they trudged through the deep snow that covered Narnia like a blanket. For as long as anyone could remember, it had been winter in Narnia. Mr. Beaver scumbled on a few metres ahead as he led them to his home. Well, it was more of a dam, really. He was a beaver after all. As they shut the door, the children could feel the warmth of the fire in the kitchen. And they saw a kindly-looking old she-beaver busily sewing in the cluttered but comfortable home. "At last! You've come at last!" said the wife of Mr. Beaver, holding out 2 wrinkled old paws. "To think I should see this day! The potatoes are boiling, the kettle's singing, and I dare say Mr. Beaver will fetch us some fish." After a good hearty meal, conversation soon turned to the reason for Mr. Beaver bringing them to his house. He'd found the children at the home of Lucy's friend, Mr. Tumnus, whom they had discovered had been arrested by Jadis, High Queen of Narnia, and taken to her house. "But she's not a real queen at all," said Lucy. "She's a witch, the White Witch, who's taken control over Narnia. Everyone, all the wood people, hate her. She's put this enchantment over the whole country so that it's always winter and never Christmas." "But what will the White Witch do to poor Mr. Tumnus?" asked Susan. "Well," said Mr. Beaver, "that's very hard to say. There's very few people go into her castle that come out again. Statues. Full of statues, they say. In the courtyard, up the stairs, in the hall. She's turned into..." And here he paused and shuddered. "Turned to stone." "But Mr. Beaver, this is terrible," said Lucy. "Surely there must be something we can do to save poor Mr. Tumnus." "Surely we could come up with some sort of stratagem," said Peter. We can't just leave him to be turned to... well, to have that happen to him." "No good you're trying. Now that Aslan is on the move." "Aslan? Oh yes, please tell us about Aslan," said several voices at once. For at the very mention of his name, a strange feeling, like the first sign of spring or good news, came over them. "Who is Aslan?" asked Susan. "Aslan," said Mr. Beaver with a glint in his eye. "Don't you know? Why, he's the king. He's the lord of the wood. He's no man. He's a lion. The lion. Now that he's back, everything will be all right. He'll soon put the witch in her place. I tell you, it's he, not you, that'll save Mr. Tumnus." "But won't the White Witch turn him into stone as well?" asked Edmund. "Turn him into stone?" said Mr. Beaver with a great laugh. "I'd like to see her try. I tell you, if she can stand on her own 2 feet and look him straight in the eye, that's more than I expect of her." "No, Aslan will sort everything to rights. You'll understand when you see him." "We shall see Aslan?" asked Susan. Why, daughter of Eve, that's the very reason why I brought you here. I think I shall feel rather nervous about meeting a lion, said Susan. Is he safe? Safe? Said Mr. Beaver. Who said anything about safe? Of course he's not safe. He's a lion. But he's good, I tell you. He's the king. I'm looking forward to meeting him, said Peter, even if I do feel rather frightened at the point. That's right, son of Adam, said Mr. Beaver, bringing his fist down onto the table with a crash so that the saucers and cups jumped up into the air. And so you shall. Word has it that he's in the wood, and he wants to see you as soon as possible. Tomorrow, if you can. And I'm to take you there, to the stone table. The children had been listening to Mr. Beaver so intently for so long that they hadn't noticed anything else going on around them. But then suddenly, in the silence, Lucy turned around and said, I say, where's Edmund? While Mr. Beaver had been speaking, Edmund had slipped out into the snow. He was on his way to the witch's house. He had already met her before, and she had promised him that if he brought his brother and sisters to her, she would give him all the Turkish delight he could eat, make him a prince, and then king. And Edmund did want that. As for what the White Witch would do to the others, well, he didn't want her to be particularly nice to them, but he managed to believe, or at least pretended to believe, that she wouldn't do anything particularly nasty. Besides, he said to himself, all these people who say such horrible things about her are her enemies, and probably half of it isn't true anyway. She was jolly nice to me when I met her. Anyway, I'm sure she is the rightful queen. She sounds an awful lot better than that awful Aslan. At least that was the excuse he made for doing all these things. But it wasn't a very good one, because deep down, Edmund knew that the witch was really cruel and evil. On through the snow, he hurriedly trudged.